for this B-25 is Rockford, Illinois, a peacetime mission to spread 500 gallons of DDT, the Army's miracle insecticide, over the city stricken with an infantile paralysis epidemic. By spraying the city, authorities will test the theory that insects are carriers of the dread germ. Air Force pictures show the method devised by the Army's branch of preventive medicine. Flying at an average altitude of 150 feet, the plane sprays a strip more than 150 yards wide at the rate of 215 gallons a minute. A bomber turns to the ways of peace, becomes an instrument of science, and may become the means of saving countless lives.
It begins with the war-born development of DDT. This diabolical weapon of modern science saved millions of humans, but killed billions of insects. Man, with this newly discovered force, has at long last gained the upper hand in our age-old struggle.
Well, the DDT, at least they were being honest back then that they were spraying us, and now they're denying that they're even doing this. I don't know the date. It looks like something from the 1950s, and that's when irregular bursts and the polio started and all that. And also polio was caused by the DDT being sprayed on the farms, and once they changed the formulas, the polio ended, and that's when they came up with the vaccine and put Salk up there, so you know. So this is all still going on. What we've done yesterday is affecting us future today. That's why we must have a consciousness about the reverence for Mother Earth. So these barrels are scattered 12 miles off of Los Angeles, exceptionally high concentrations of DDT banned in the 1970s, but sprayed over people in the 1950s and the 1960s. 25,000 barrels contain DDT-laced industrial waste just sitting there off the coast of Los Angeles. The waste is more of a threat now than the barrels were dumped in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. Once they lose their containment, they get into the water system. It does not dissolve in water, but may enter the food chain, working its way into fish and other marine life. One of the biggest environmental threats on the West Coast, Feinstein said. Are they doing anything about it? No, they're just observing. They got scientists from NOAA. They got seepers. They got all these things going down to look at them. But what can you do about it? It's on the ocean floor. Can you bring it up and it breaks apart and it scatters in the water? What are you going to do? Thousands of barrels now littering the floor believe they still have captured only the tip of the iceberg, remnants of a time before DDT carried the menacing connotations it does now. No, they knew it was going to kill people. They knew it was going to hurt people. But Big Pharma says, more people get sick, the more money we make. A patient cured is a patient lost. Hey, let's get everybody sick, but never cure them. Just in the shots, folks. This is in our water supplies. This is taken from rain samples straight out of the sky, boiled down to concentrate, no water but distilled that is safe to drink. The aircraft spraying us all over. So take a look at these pictures. And we're seeing the same type of examples of artificial intelligence in the water samples that this person took. What does that look like, folks? There's your 6-headed, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-headed Hydra. And look how it's creating right here out of the center, the 3 heads going out and creating this. Again, under intense microscopes. These are artificial. These are not, quote, normal. And these are in our water supply. Right? See the little nanobots in there? They are artificial intelligence. Look at the little sharp little teeth on those things. What do you think that eats up in a body? These are all targeted and designed with highly sophisticated technology to activate, to regenerate, to replicate, to create eggs. This may be an egg creation right here where they're reproducing, and allegedly it's irreversible. But look at the technology inside this. Look at the structures of the lines of that. What is its purpose? A little snake inside you? Anybody got worms inside them? This is in the water supplies. This is why Celeste Salam was saying it's critical. It's critical that you get your own water supplies and distill the water from the heavy metals. I don't know if that'll help or not, but if you can get on a well or get someone that has some filtered water from well water, that would be your best way to do this. And if you can't, I'd boil water. But that's going to be a pain in the butt, and then any food you eat is going to have that in the water that they make the food with as well. So can we get away from this? Can we mitigate from the rains that are coming down and getting into our water supplies that are affecting us with these nanobot technologies, the hydrogels. Hydro vulgaris, they call it. What does that mean? The vulgar water. Vulgar water. Look at the structures on these things. Highly sophisticated technology. And UC Davis Biology Lab universities are promoting this. Unflippin' real.
Take a look at what you're looking at. Let's go full screen. Does this look familiar? Then you may say, oh, no, I'm going to prove it to you. They admit it. It's called a hydra. And it is something of Greek myth origin. And there is a constellation called Hydra as well. And it's self-replicating. Okay.
So by understanding how the brain works, by understanding how these neural circuits build these mathematical algorithms that enable these fantastic computations, I'm sure we will revolutionize the computer industry and our current technology. For these three reasons, it's critical to figure out how the brain works. And neuroscientists have been trying to do this now for 100 years. So you could argue, so what's wrong with neuroscientists? Why haven't we figured this out? And the reason is that we don't have the right methods. And this was the idea behind the US Brain Initiative that we proposed to President Obama and which he launched in 2013. The Brain Initiative is a large-scale scientific project to develop new methods for neuroscience. These new methods are called neurotechnology, and there are essentially two types of neurotechnology. Neurotechnology to read information from the brain, and in our original proposal, this is actually one of the slides that we used in the White House. The Brain Initiative, it's now in its 6th year. It's slated to last 15, with an estimated total budget of $6 billion. And it currently employs approximately 550 labs around the country and also around the world. So this is a massive scientific undertaking, and we're starting to see the fruits of these new tools that have been applied first in small animals like worms, and eventually with bigger animals like flies, fish, mouse, until we get to the human brain. The US Brain Initiative has been copied by other countries, and similar initiatives were launched after the US one in China, in Japan, in Korea, in Australia, in Canada, in Israel, and also in the European Union. In fact, all these international brain initiatives are now harnessed together in a joint global brain initiative, an international brain initiative, which was launched in 2017 in Canberra, Australia. And here in this picture, you see representatives of all these international brain initiatives that were signing a document to work together as a team. So this US Brain Initiative is not alone. There are similar programs throughout the world, and the private sector has also jumped in. And as of last year, at least in the US, private companies are outspending federal investments in neurotechnology by a factor of 6. So when we did the numbers in 2020, the US Brain Initiative invested $500 million, and there was approximately $3 billion invested the same year by private companies. And the private companies, most of them are tech companies from Silicon Valley, are interested in this economic benefit of neurotechnology because of the perception that the next revolution in technology is going to be it's going to supersede the iPhone, and it will become some sort of device that you will wear in your head, a brain-computer interface that will enable you to connect directly with the net. So let's examine how we are as of today. The plan for the BRAIN initiative over 15 years was to start with developing tools to map circuits of small animals, small number of neurons, and eventually graduate to larger and larger animals. So let me show you an example of the success of these types of projects in an animal which is called Hydra. And these are the animals that have the simplest brains in evolution. Hydra are cnidarians, just like jellyfishes, like sea anemone or corals. These are freshwater polyps that are small, on the order of a few millimeters tall, and they have a nervous system that is distributed across the entire body of the animal with very few hundred neurons. In this movie on the right, I'm showing you the complete activity of the entire brain of a Hydra.
Verizon and AT&T tell us they'll begin deploying 5G trials in 2017. And these efforts will, of course, help inform the standards process by putting stakes in the ground. And the first commercial deployments they're talking about are expected in 2020. Commercial deployments they're talking about are expected in 2020. 2020. This timeline requires that we act to pave the path today. July 15, 1960, John F. Kennedy strode to the podium at the Los Angeles Coliseum to accept the Democratic nomination for president. And he famously challenged the American people to be pioneers of a new frontier. He spoke of harnessing the power of the technological revolution and exploring uncharted areas of science and space. JFK's vision charted a path that took us to the moon and laid out the foundation of the internet. This July 14th, 56 years less one day from when JFK talked about the new frontier, we will have the opportunity to take an historic step to open up yet another frontier that promises to propel our nation and the world forward. Once again, we're looking to the sky to unlock new discoveries and unleash American ingenuity. We are the pioneers of a new spectrum frontier. Working together, we can write this next chapter in the mobile revolution, a revolution that has already transformed our lives and society. Working together, we can unleash new waves of innovation and discovery that we have yet to imagine. Thank you very much. So to overcome these challenges and to seize the opportunity before us, we need the next generation of wireless connectivity, a fifth generation, or 5G. And if the United States is going to continue to be a world leader in wireless, we need to speed the deployment of 5G here on our shores. The virtual reality example that I gave is but one sample of the effects of high-speed, low-latency connectivity, and why American leadership in 5G must be a national priority. That we now, with 5G, know the threat and have an opportunity to address it from the get-go.
Okay, we talked about how the United States is leading when it comes to 5G. What are other countries doing, and how do we maintain that leadership spot compared to Europe or somewhere else?
So the European Union, China, Japan, and South Korea have all signed a memorandum of understanding that they would all work together to develop 5G. The European Union has put up 700 million euros to do 5G research. As I referenced in my remarks, we think that's the wrong way to go. We think that making the spectrum available and standing out of the way of technology development is far better than, well, let's sit around and wait till we decide what it's going to do and then make the spectrum available, and let's micromanage the technology process. That's not the way that we're going to be approaching it. Looks like. Yes, 5G will connect the Internet of Everything. If something can be connected, it will be connected in the 5G world. But with the predictions of hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers, you can be sure of only one thing. The biggest Internet of Things application has yet to be imagined. Yes, brilliant engineers have developed new antennas that can aim and amplify signals, coupled with sophisticated processing that allows a moving device to pick up all of the signals that are bouncing around and create one coherent connection. Now, to make this work, the 5G build-out is going to be very infrastructure intensive, requiring massive deployment of small cells. But it also opens up requiring massive deployment of small cells. Massive deployment of small cells. To make sure that we have this connectivity with high-band spectrum will require a lot more small cells, which means a lot more antenna siting decisions by local governments. That's why it's important that the Commission has strengthened our environmental and historical preservation rules and tightened our shot clock for siting application reviews. America's local governments will play an important role in determining how we fulfill this national priority. In addition, all these small cells need to be connected, so we'll need a lot more backhaul. That's a challenge that we're going to address through our proceeding on business data services, the kind of dedicated access that wireless providers need to connect cell towers and antennas to their networks. These backhaul networks, these backhaul connections, can be as much as 30% of the cost of operating a wireless network. And with the additional sites required to support the use of millimeter wave spectrum, that percentage is likely to increase to as much as 50%. But in many areas, competition in the supply of backhaul remains limited, and that can translate into higher prices for wireless networks and then higher prices for consumers. Lack of competition doesn't just hurt the deployment of wireless networks today. It threatens as well the delay of the build-out of 5G networks, with the demand for many, many more backhaul connections to many, many more antenna. Before the end of this year, the Commission will take up a reform proposal supported by all the nation's leading wireless carriers, save one, that will encourage innovation and investment in business data services while ensuring that lack of competition in some places cannot be used to hold 5G hostage. As we build the next generation network, a lesson learned from our previous experiences is that it must be secure. So this is the third leg of the stool. New platforms, systems, software, and technologies will mean new vulnerabilities. Cybersecurity issues must be addressed during the design phase of the entire 5G ecosystem, including devices. This will place a premium on collaboration amongst all stakeholders. We continue to prefer an approach that emphasizes that industry develop cybersecurity standards, just as we have done in the wired networks. But security is an essential component of where we go on networks, and we will have the ability to think about it first as a forethought rather than an afterthought. And we're not done. As part of our July 14 action, we also plan to ask for comments on opening up other high-frequency bands. And what we'll be considering on July 14th is not just licensed spectrum. Unlicensed will continue to play a critical role in future 5G networks. And our plan proposes a massive 14 gigahertz unlicensed band. Consider that, 14,000 megahertz of unlicensed spectrum with the same flexible use rules that allowed unlicensed to become a breeding ground for innovation. Opening up spectrum and offering flexibility to operators and innovators is the most important thing that we can do to enable the 5G revolution. But it's not the only thing. We also need to work our way through spectrum sharing issues. Sharing is essential for the future of spectrum utilization. Many of the high-frequency bands that we will make available for 5G currently have some satellite users, as well as some Defense Department applications, or at least the possibility of future satellite and defense users. This means sharing will be required between satellite and terrestrial wireless, an issue that is especially relevant in the 28 gigahertz band. It is also a consideration in the additional bands that we will identify for future exploration. We will strike a balance that offers flexibility for satellite users to expand while providing terrestrial licensees with predictability about the areas in which satellites will locate. However, we must reject the notion that the 5G future will be the sole provenance of urban areas. The 5G revolution will touch all corners of our country.